How did one of the most enduring and volatile conflicts in modern history begin? Why has a narrow strip of land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River become sacred, contested, and fought over for more than 3,000 years? To understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we must begin not in the 20th century, but deep in the ancient world, where faith, empire, and identity first collided.
The ancient foundations, faith, and kingship. The earliest roots of the conflict stretch back to the 17th century BC, when, according to Jewish tradition, the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob settled in the land of Canaan. This region roughly corresponds to present-day Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and parts of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. Over time, it became known by many names: the Land of Israel, the Promised Land, Palestine, and the Holy Land, each name reflecting a different cultural and political claim. Around 1000 BC, the Israelite tribes united under King Saul, forming the first Jewish monarchy. His successor, King David, captured Jerusalem and made it his capital, transforming the city into both a political and spiritual center. David's son, King Solomon, further cemented this status by constructing the first temple, establishing Jerusalem as the heart of Jewish religious life. But unity was fragile. After Solomon's death, the kingdom fractured into two rival states: the Kingdom of Israel in the north, with its capital at Samaria, the Kingdom of Judah in the south, centered on Jerusalem. This division marked a recurring pattern that would define the region's history: political fragmentation followed by foreign domination. Empire and erasure, Rome and the name Palestine. Over the following centuries, the land was conquered repeatedly by Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, and Greeks, each conquest reducing Jewish autonomy and population. The most consequential of these came with the Roman Empire. After crushing a series of Jewish revolts, Rome sought not only military control, but cultural erasure. Judea was renamed Syria Palestina, an intentional attempt to sever Jewish identification with the land. Jerusalem was rebuilt as a Roman city, and Jewish life was increasingly pushed into exile. It was during this Roman era that Christianity, which began as a Jewish sect, spread rapidly and eventually became the dominant religion of the empire. The religious landscape of the region was already shifting, long before Islam would arrive. The Islamic conquest and a shared sacred city. In the 7th century, Arab Muslim armies swept out of Arabia, conquering vast territories across the Middle East. Jerusalem fell peacefully to Islamic rule, and Islam became the region's dominant political and cultural force. The city's sacred status only deepened. The Dome of the Rock was built on the site of the Second Jewish Temple, making Jerusalem a holy city for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike, a rare convergence that would also become a permanent source of tension. For centuries, Islamic empires governed the land, though religious minorities were largely tolerated. That balance collapsed during the Crusades, when European Christian armies launched campaigns to reclaim Jerusalem. These wars devastated the region, killing Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike, and further entrenching the land as a battleground of sacred claims. Ottoman rule and the return of a national idea. By the 16th century, the region came under the control of the Ottoman Empire, which would rule it for nearly 400 years. Though officially part of a larger imperial system, the land was commonly referred to as Palestine. During this long period of relative stability, a transformation was occurring far away in Europe. Facing centuries of persecution, pogroms, and exclusion, many Jews embraced a new political movement in the late 19th century, Zionism. The belief that Jews required a sovereign homeland in their ancestral land. By the early 20th century, tens of thousands of Jews began migrating to Ottoman Palestine, laying the groundwork for a demographic and political shift that would soon accelerate dramatically. British rule and the collision of promises. World War I shattered the Ottoman Empire. Britain seized control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate, inheriting a deeply complex situation. In the Balfour Declaration, Britain promised to support the creation of a Jewish national homeland, while also assuring Arab leaders of independence. These promises were incompatible. As Jewish immigration increased, particularly during the rise of Nazi Germany, tensions between Jewish and Arab communities exploded into violence. Britain attempted to limit Jewish immigration, prompting Jewish militias to resist British rule. Then came the Holocaust, which murdered nearly 6 million Jews and made the demand for a secure homeland impossible to ignore. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Britain withdrew.
Partition, War, and Catastrophe. In 1947, the United Nations proposed partitioning Palestine into two states, one Jewish, one Arab, with Jerusalem under international control. Though Jews made up only 1/3 of the population, they were allocated over half the land. Arab leaders rejected the plan. In 1948, as Britain completed its withdrawal, Israel declared independence. War erupted immediately as neighboring Arab states invaded. When the fighting ended, Israel controlled more than 2/3 of historic Palestine. Jordan occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem, while Egypt took control of Gaza. Over 750,000 Palestinians were expelled or fled their homes, an event Palestinians call al-Nakba, the catastrophe. The conflict had entered its modern, irreversible phase. Occupation, uprisings, and failed peace. Further wars followed, most notably the Six-Day War of 1967, in which Israel captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. Though Sinai was later returned to Egypt, the Palestinian territories remained under Israeli occupation. The rise of Palestinian nationalism followed. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, launched armed resistance, while Israeli settlements expanded across occupied land. In 1987, the First Intifada erupted, an uprising born of occupation, frustration, and hopelessness. This violence led to the Oslo Accords, which divided the West Bank into zones of partial Palestinian and Israeli control. But core issues, Jerusalem, refugees, settlements, remained unresolved. When peace talks collapsed in 2000, the Second Intifada erupted, triggered in part by Ariel Sharon's visit to the Temple Mount. Though Israel withdrew from Gaza, settlement expansion in the West Bank continued. Hamas, Gaza, and an unfinished war. In Gaza, political divisions within Palestinian society reached a breaking point. Hamas, an Islamist militant organization, seized control of the territory after violent clashes with rival factions. Viewing Hamas as an existential threat, Israel imposed a strict blockade on Gaza, restricting movement of people and goods. What followed was a grim cycle: escalation, war, ceasefire, and collapse. Repeated conflicts devastated Gaza's infrastructure, displaced civilians, and entrenched hostility. Each round of fighting pushed reconciliation further out of reach, while diplomatic efforts struggled to keep pace with realities on the ground. International decisions, such as the United States formally recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, were interpreted by Palestinians as confirmation that the diplomatic process no longer served them. Faith in negotiations gave way to despair, while anger and fear became permanent features of life on both sides of the divide. Ceasefires still arrive, often brokered by outside powers, but they do not end the conflict. They merely pause it. An ancient land, a modern reckoning. What began as a sacred homeland became a crossroads of empires. What was once a refuge became a battlefield. And what had once been shared became divided by memory, trauma, and fear. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not a single dispute, nor the result of one decision or one war. It is a layered inheritance of faith, empire, nationalism, and broken promises, built across thousands of years. And even now, in the modern world, it remains a ticking fault line where history has not yet finished speaking.